to the ITSM Practice Podcast.
Welcome to the ITSM Practice Podcast. I'm Luigi Ferri. Let me begin with a point that may sound harsh, and that's intentional. Lately, I see more and more organizations talking about AI governance maturity. There are maturity models, there are assessment frameworks, there are dashboards showing how governance capabilities are improving. Boards ask for them, consultants benchmark them, leaders proudly present them. And in many cases, the message is reassuring. We are progressing. Our governance is becoming mature. We are moving toward advanced capability. But every time I see one of those dashboards, one question comes to mind. Does maturity actually make organizations safer? What I increasingly see is something different, a growing gap between how well organizations govern AI and how well they actually understand it. We can call this the governance understanding gap. In many organizations today, maturity has become a signal of control. If the governance framework exists, if the policies are defined, if the committees meet regularly, then the assumption is that organizations is managing risk properly. And to be fair, those things do matter. Good governance needs structure, but maturity models mostly measure things like documentation, review procedures, risk registers, oversight structures, audit evidence, all of which describe how governance is organized. What they rarely describe is something more fundamental, how the AI system actually behaves. And that difference matters more than it may appear. Traditional IT systems are mostly predictable. If you understand the inputs and the code, you can usually explain the output. AI systems are different. They learn from data. They evolve as models are retrained. They interact with environments that keep changing. Sometimes they behave exactly as expected. Sometimes they don't. And in many organizations, even the teams responsible for those systems cannot fully explain every decision path the system may take. That's not a failure of engineering. It's simply the nature of complex systems. But here is the issue. Most governance maturity frameworks were designed for environments where systems behave in relatively stable ways. They assume the system is known. AI systems often are not. And this creates a quiet mismatch between how governance is measured and what is actually happening inside the system. Over the last few years, I have seen organizations invest heavily in AI governance. New policies are written, oversight boards are created, review processes are introduced. From the outside, governance looks stronger every year. And according to maturity assessment, that is often true. But at the same time, the systems being governed are becoming more dynamic. Models are updated, new datasets appear, capabilities expand. Sometimes the governance structure improves faster than organizations' understanding of the system itself. And when that happens, maturity can create a false sense of confidence, because the organization becomes very good at demonstrating control, even when the system behavior is not fully understood. This is where the governance standing gap becomes visible. This becomes visible the moment something goes wrong. Imagine an AI system makes a harmful decision. It may be a biased recommendation, a financial miscalculation, a risk assessment that turns out to be dangerously wrong. At that moment, one question suddenly becomes very important. Who owns that decisions? Is it the development team, the product owner, the governance committee, the executive who approved the deployment? Or is it no one? Because the system simply behaved according to its model? Most maturity frameworks cannot answer that question. They measure process maturity. They measure governance structure, but they rarely clarify decision ownership. And without clear ownership, governance becomes procedural rather than protective. There is a simple way to reduce this risk. Before any AI system is deployed, explicitly map decision ownership. Not at the level of committees or governance structures, but at the level of an accountable individual. Someone who owns the outcome if the system makes a harmful or incorrect decision. Without that clarity, governance remains procedural rather than operational. So, if you want to understand whether governance maturity reflects reality in your organization, try something simple. Not a formal audit, just a conversation. Try 3 questions. First question. Ask the team responsible for your most important AI system. What is the worst decision this system could realistically make? Not in theory, in practice. What is the most damaging outcome that could plausibly happen? In many organizations, that question produces a long pause. Not because people are incompetent, but because the system has grown more complex than anyone expected. Second question. Ask your governance or risk team. Which AI system in this organization do we understand the least? Not the one with the weakest documentation, the one whose behavior is hardest to explain. If no one can answer that question clearly, governance is probably monitoring processes rather than systems. Third question. And then ask something maturity models almost never address. If this system makes a harmful decision tomorrow, who owns it? Not the committee, not the framework, a person. If the answer is vague, governance maturity may look strong on paper, but still be fragile in practice. Governance maturity is not meaningless. Structure matters. Process matters. Accountability frameworks matter. But they are not the same thing as understanding. And if organizations forget that distinction, something subtle begins to happen. They become excellent at demonstrating maturity, and gradually worse at recognizing their own risk, which leads to a final thought. AI governance maturity will not protect organizations that do not understand the systems they deploy. And in many cases, the governance understanding gap is wider than it appears. Thank you for listening. I'm Luigi Ferri, and this was the ITSM Practice Podcast. Arrivederci.